Hello and welcome back to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Friday, March 1st. We got a 7-game slate on both FanDuel and Draftkings. One important thing to note with Draftkings, there's no late swap tonight. So once the games start, everything locks and just let the chips fall how they may. But one thing to think of with that situation is you might have to gamble on some injury situations. The second round of games, the 5 p.m. games here on the West Coast, we might not have all the injury news for those games. So those games, you're going to have to decide if you think somebody's going to play or not, and then go with that direction. Just understand that you're taking educated guesses. And there is some, leverage. There's some game theory opportunities there if you want to take chances or if you want to play it safe. It's all up to you. Now, we're going to get through it, go position by position. But before we do, promo codes right down there. In the description, we have promo codes. Or you could go to our pricing page where which you see right here. We got ParlayPlay, Sleeper, Underdog, CHALKBOARD, all of which will get you up to 1 month free of Line Star if you are a new user to those operators. All of them do the pick'em type stuff that we've seen really gain popularity lately. And then Underdog also does best ball contests, which they got a big best ball contest going on for baseball. So you got about a month left, or 4 weeks or so, until good old baseball's back. All right, now let's get into it. Enough chit-chatting. As always, we will go start on FanDuel. And Jordan Goodwin starts with our highest owned point guard. Look, we have him at 37%. I think he's going to be way higher than that. If I remember, he was around 60% the last time he played and started. His price is up, 1K more, but I think there's more certainty that he's going to get 30, 31, 32 minutes, something like that. And with that, ownership is still going to be probably pretty heavy on him when he's at 5.3K. After all, the value looks pretty nice on him. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in more around 50%. Next, we got Anthony Simons, 7,600, 19% owned. Look, the Trailblazers and Memphis, really, both teams in this game are very banged up, and they're going to be short guys. Simons very well could get 36, 37 minutes and have the ball in his hands a ton. Now, he is boom bust. If that shot is falling, he very well could break the slate. However, he could also give you 20, and just absolutely kill you. So do with that what you will. I don't mind him, not getting to a ton of him, but I don't mind having him a little bit. Darius Garland is coming up next. So the big thing here is Karis LeVert and Donovan Mitchell are both questionable. If those guys are out, Garland looks great. I'm not getting too much of them right now. I am not making any decisions as far as Mitchell or LeVert. We should have that information before lock, so I don't think it's a situation we really need to think about too much until we know that information. So as of now, I've just counted both of them playing. I mean, they both finished the game the other night, so I have no reason to believe they wouldn't play today. And with that, I think Garland's priced up a little bit, and I don't really care to go to him that much. All right, now the pivots. So I like Tyrese Maxey. Once again, the guy is living in the mid-40s. He has that 60-point ceiling. It's a very beatable opponent in Charlotte. And the guy's averaging like 1.24 fantasy per minute without Embiid on the court. Once again, no Embiid. So I got no reason not to roll with him in a decent matchup here. Next, we got Steph Curry. Curry's finally been playing kind of like the Curry that we expected to. He's had a few down games here, 4 in a row that didn't quite do it, but he's just coming off this run of mid 50s, high of 74, and he has a very good matchup here versus the Raptors getting, no ownership, or very little ownership. So I am absolutely intrigued by going with some Steph. The other thing to think about here is there's no Wiggins and likely no Brandon Podimski. So with those two guys, maybe the rotation is a little bit shorter today. And if that's the case, give me some extra minutes with some Curry. And Donovan Mitchell. While everybody's going to Garland, I'll go to the stud of the team. Yeah, he's had a few off games, but the guy has that 60, 70 point ceiling that we want. He's in the mid 50s all the time. I don't mind paying $9.8K for him in a good matchup. So I'm not worried about his possible injury. He played just fine the other night versus Chicago. I mean, he didn't play great, but he played 44 minutes. That's the real thing here is he's playing minutes. And I don't mind going there at low ownership. On to DK. So we got Jordan Goodwin, Tyrese Maxey, Anthony Simons as the high-owned guy. Maxey is, $600, $700 cheaper here on DraftKings. Makes sense that he's higher owned. He's been really good fantasy per minute. And $4,700 for Goodwin is cheaper than on FanDuel. So high ownership is expected there. And I also will give a shout out to Scotty Barnes. Think he's in a decent spot. Tyrese Halliburton, we've seen those huge ceilings, 9.4K, absolutely interesting. Now, getting over to the matchup tool. Best matchup, my man Steph Curry. Very good matchup tonight. Shorter rotation, absolutely interesting. Drew Holiday versus Dallas. Dallas, is a pace-up opponent. They let a lot of guys score. They pretty much believe we just need to score more points than the other guy, which, yes, that's how you win basketball games, but it doesn't highlight a defense. And with that, Drew is a little bit interesting. And let's move it on to shooting guard. So we got Klay Thompson, Moses Moody, and Vince Williams. So as I talked about, no Andrew Wiggins. Moody's been starting in his absence, and then Brandon Podimski is doubtful. So I do expect Klay Thompson to slide back into the starting lineup. And with that, everybody's really, really liking him. One thing I have to say, I don't really think it matters if he is in the starting lineup or not. If anything, I think his usage is actually down if it's in the starting lineup because he's playing with better guys. So I could care less. He's been right around this price point and hasn't really done a whole lot. We do know, however, the ceiling is there. He could go 10x. I just don't love that he's coming in high owned. I don't think at high ownership it's somewhere that I'm going to be going a ton. We got Moody. Moody is fine. He is just simply a filler. He is only playing 23, 26 minutes. I would expect more of the 26 likely in this game just because they have another rotation player out today. So we have him actually at 28. So he does, project to be one of the better spots for us on this slate. Do not mind whatsoever going to some Moody. We'll also say there's a couple other Warriors that are interesting. Kuminga's interesting. Peyton coming off the bench might be interesting. They have a lot of different guys that could be interesting because of the minutes. Next, Vince Williams. Look, Memphis is dealing with a ton of injuries. So their same slew of guys are out. And then there's Kennard and Kankar, both doubtful. Jaren Jackson's out. Derrick Rose is out. The ball handlers for Memphis are extremely short. Thus, Jordan Goodwin's chalk. Vince Williams is kind of chalk. And those are some pretty interesting spots for me to go. I do expect Williams to play a ton of minutes. When everybody was hurt a little bit ago, he was playing that 35, 37, 38 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets back up to that in a very good matchup. So I'm absolutely intrigued by some Vince Williams here. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. I do think Jordan Goodwin brings his ceiling down a little bit just because maybe he doesn't have the ball in his hands quite as much. But he's going to be asked to do a lot in this game and play a lot. And we've seen that, high 40s ceiling. And it's absolutely possible again in this situation. Next, we got some pivots. Donovan Mitchell, talked about him already. We got Herb Jones. Herb Jones, with everybody healthy, is nowhere near like the Herb Jones with at least one guy out. Do I mind going there? No, it's a huge pace-up spot. He can get a lot of steals and blocks to really boost up his fantasy production. So while I don't love it, I am a little bit intrigued at the lower ownership, especially if you're trying to stack this game a little bit. It is the highest scoring game of the night. And Jaylen Brown. I think the field is likely going to Tatum in this spot, but man, Brown is extremely good, and in a high-paced game, that's really where he excels a little bit more. He can do a lot with the ball. He has a high ceiling. It's just his floor is low as well, so he is a GPP play. I wouldn't be playing him in cash, but I don't mind him here in on a tournament. And getting over to DK on shooting guard, high-owned Zaire Williams, Vince Williams, Moses Moody. Zaire, I am absolutely talking about. I think I was talking about him probably at small forward here on FanDuel, but let's just talk about him now. I think he's in an absolutely great spot. The thing is, if you go back through his game log, when he plays 30-plus minutes, he gets there. He plays very well. He gets around right around 30 plus. And we know he has the high ceiling. So I am absolutely intrigued by Zaire Williams. It's a very good matchup. And I think he's going to get some minutes tonight because they're going to have to. Frankly, the Memphis, I think, only have 10 players. But they only really have 9 or 8 that will, see the floor, I think. So definitely intrigued by some Zaire. Vince we covered, and we will move it on over to shooting guard matchup tool. Andrew Nembhard, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is questionable, so he is one of those guys we need to watch for news as the day goes on. Nembhard, I like Nembhard a lot more if Aaron Naismith is out. His minutes have gone up a little bit when Naismith is out. He had a couple games, 32, 33 minutes. The last couple, 90, 27, 29. So maybe that's just, leveling out a little bit. But I am a little bit intrigued if Naismith is out. If he's in, probably totally off of him. Now, small forward on FanDuel, Jason Tatum coming in as the highest owned small forward. Then Zaire Williams, who we just talked about. I definitely like him, getting a ton of him. And then Vince Williams. Now, not too far below that is Tobias Harris. I am absolutely intrigued by Tobias Harris. We talked about this matchup. It is the Hornets. Everybody scores against the Hornets. So I am not scared off by taking Tobias Harris. He hasn't been playing that well, but his ceiling games have all come without Embiid. He does have that mid-50s ceiling without Embiid. Doesn't take a ton of him to get back there. One thing that is a little scary is lately his minutes haven't been there. 27, 34, 31, 29. Now this is a guy that typically plays solid minutes. Last 20, 33 minutes a game is what he is averaging. I think there's a real possibility where he plays, 35, 36 in a close game. But regardless, his price is low enough. I'm intrigued. Do not mind going there whatsoever. Another pivot, Jeremy Grant. Talked about this game a lot. Now, this game is by far the lowest total on the slate. So that is worrying a little bit. But the thing here, both teams are injured. Their starters are going to play a lot of minutes. And I think Jeremy Grant is exactly that. We've seen a very big ceiling when no Ayton, no Brogdon, no Sharp are on the court. And that's exactly what we got. So over the last 20, he's 0.97 fantasy point per minute. But without those guys on the court, he's up to like 1.06. So I'm pretty intrigued by him in a matchup versus a Grizzlies team that's not very good. obviously, this pace is scary. So if all the ownership is on this game, it would be wise to have some, where you're off of this game a little bit. But I am very intrigued by stacking up this game a little bit. I think price points are low enough that you can really do some damage in this game. And I'm going to be watching ownership on it. And having some Portland guys will help offset some of those high-owned Memphis guys. Miles Bridges, another guy. Look, I talked about him a lot. Without Rozier, without Ball, he was frankly balling. He's come down to earth a little bit recently, but 2 games versus Milwaukee, can't really fault him for that. Game versus Portland, it was a blowout that they won. Wasn't asked to do much, but he still was 18-10. It's not like he had a bad game. He just had 1 steal, no blocks, only 1 assist. He just needed to do a little bit more in those ancillary stats to get there. But outside of that, mid 40s, 50s, 60s, he's been all over the place. Don't mind going there in this spot. Plays a ton of minutes, and if nobody's there, I'm absolutely intrigued. Herb Jones we went over, Jaylen Brown we went over, and getting over to small forward on DraftKings, Jason Tatum, Jair Williams, Vince Williams are the 3 high-owned guys, all 3 over 30% owned, and matchup tool. Moses Moody coming in with the best matchup. Brandon Miller slightly behind, and Jaden McDaniels. Miller is pretty interesting. We know he has that ceiling when he gets it going, and he's going to have to get it going here in this spot, and it's a very good matchup for him. It is likely him or Bridges leading the scoring on this team, so one of them's got to do some work to stay into this game. Philadelphia's been pretty bad lately, so maybe it will be easy to stay in the game. Pretty scary seeing Philly minus 11 favorites. That's crazy with how bad they've been. All right. Now, let's get over to power forward on FanDuel. Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, Tobias Harris, 3 highest owned. Santi Aldama right there at 20%. So, Zion, this game is an interesting one, 239 total. Don't mind going to some Zion. I do worry because some of the guys are healthy again, that his minutes are going to go back down to like 30, 32-ish. It is a guy that obviously is always hurt and has really struggled to stay healthy. So with that, I'm not that surprised if they don't go full minutes on him. We are projecting him for almost 34 right now. Just understand that that is one of my worries, that he could be a little bit lower. And if that happens, this value would be a little bit worse. Now, it's a very good spot. Pacers, obviously very high pace. The other thing is Jonas Valanciunas only played like 8 minutes last game versus the Pacers. If that's the case, again, it definitely frees up Zion a little bit more to do some work. After all, he took 20 shots in this last game against them. If he's taking 20 shots in a night, I would expect him to get there. He only put up 32, but he had 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He'd had absolutely nothing other than points in those shot attempts. Normally, in that situation, he would probably be crushing. When he gets to 20, he usually does pretty good. 44 points, 50, right there, 57. Just under 20, 50. So those shot attempts were there in this matchup. I would expect them to be in the there again. Pivots, we talked about Grant. Jared Allen. Jared Allen has been a regular for me lately. He's just doing really well. Very, very consistent. My worry is with Mobley there, he doesn't have that ceiling, but he's living right around 40. And if he happens to get you that 46, 48, then you're looking pretty good. Jabari Walker is a pivot I like. I'm pretty intrigued by it. Look, his minutes have been way down lately. 17, 18, 19, right around there. But with all their injuries, would not be surprised if he's at 24 or a little over even. Wouldn't even be surprised if they slid him into the starting lineup tonight. I do think it's an interesting spot. He's a guy that produces very well for fantasy, almost right around 1 minute or 1 point per fantasy minute. He's cheap. Makes sense to go there versus a Grizzlies team. Just need to get him some minutes. And Draymond Green. Look, Draymond's been really good for the last month or so, month and a half. And don't mind going back to him. He has that huge ceiling. There's a big total. They got some injuries. However, the injuries are more on the wing, so I don't know if he's going to get a couple extra minutes. But the ceiling is there for him. It is an away game. They're going to need him to help win this game, I believe. So do not mind going there. And power forward on DraftKings, we got Jason Tatum, Aldama, Jeremy Grant as the high owned. I do have to say Greg Jackson here does look pretty interesting today. He is questionable though, so this is another spot we definitely have to watch. If he is out, the team, is just further hurt and more minutes go everywhere else. But if he plays, we have him projected 27 minutes. Looks awfully nice. And power forward matchup tool, Jonathan Kuminga, Miles Bridges, Scotty Barnes. I like all of them. Kuminga, I do think is interesting. One thing right now, I have him at, right around 28, 29 minutes. We have him at 29 and a half. But this good run of games is when guys were hurt and he was getting 34 minutes. There is a path to him getting extra minutes tonight. If he gets up to 32, 34, he's going to look real interesting. I'm definitely intrigued by him and wouldn't mind having some of him, especially because he's coming in a little low owned. Scotty Barnes, look, he's 9,300 and can get you 60 any night of the week. So absolutely intrigued, especially at a good spot versus Warrior teams and a high total. So absolutely intrigued by little Scotty B. And getting over to the center spot on FanDuel, Trey Jemison coming in highest owned. I think he might be very high owned, especially if Greg Jackson is out. Now, we don't know what that's going to be like. We may not know till after lock, so this is a spot you may have to decide what to do. But I think he's very interesting. We've seen him start in the past. If he gets 24, 25 minutes, he can absolutely get there. 0.92 fantasy point per minute guy. So definitely intrigued, but I would say there's big time worries for him because it does depend fairly heavily on what Jackson does. If Jackson plays, there may not be a ton of minutes for him. Jackson doesn't play, I would say you could count on at least 24 minutes for him, and it becomes very interesting. But regardless, right now, I'm getting to a lot of them, and I think I have them around 25 as well. Jared Allen, Santi Aldama. Dupe Reith is one to consider and look at later. It is expected that he's going to start at center. Ayton is doubtful, so Reith likely fills in there. We saw when he got his run of starts here that he did decently, had a solid ceiling with 43 this one game, but it was one that he played 41 minutes. I would not expect that. I would expect it more in that 26 to 28 range, and, he's not dead shoe-in for being able to get there like Trey Mason would if he was the starter. Now on to DK, Trey Jemison, Dupe Reith, and Lamar Stevens. Lamar Stevens could start at center in this situation today with Jaren Jackson out. Really not sure what's going on exactly, but he's been getting some minutes. I would expect minutes at least to be there, and he's produced well on a fantasy per minute standpoint, so I don't mind going there. It's one of those spots where we just really need to watch the news throughout the day, especially if you're on DraftKings, because you may not know that starting lineup before lock, and it is a spot where you definitely are going to want to take some chances and kind of figure out what to do there. And moving it on to matchups. Dupe Reith with the best matchup. Lamar Stevens, who we have as starter for them, but it could be a lot of guys. Second best matchup, then Jacob Podol and Paul Reed. Reed does get a little interesting here. The thing is, his minutes are so hard to figure out. If he gets 30 minutes, he could blow out this price tag, but he could give you 14 minutes or 20 minutes. So he's a weird one. Very, very hard to project right now. And projections anywhere on him are very fragile right now. So do with that what you will. And that'll do it for us today and for this week. Thank you guys. We will be back next week. Good luck. Let's make some money. Adios.